talk all day if you want it.
Objection.
All right, settle down, everybody. Settle.
With Nate Lucas on 590 The Fan.
Hey, we welcome you into The Verdict here on a Tuesday. Super Bowl week, of course, unraveling out in Vegas. Chiefs remain a 2-point dog in that game coming up against the 49ers, Super Bowl 58. And it's always kind of fun to watch the different interviews for Radio Row. We will have Brandon Lang on with us tomorrow live from Radio Row, and we'll get his official prediction for Super Bowl 58. But the closer and closer this thing gets, I just continue to think that the Kansas City Chiefs are going to pull it off again against the 49ers. But I'm not going to make that decision final until I have to, so towards the end of the week here on 590 The Fan. Right out of the gates here, we're going to chat it over Mark Schipper with Fifth Down College Football. We've had him on before. You can hear him on various platforms, ESPN Radio, Sirius XM. He's also got a college football book out and a newsletter, which everyone should subscribe to. And Mark is kind enough to hop on with us here out of the gates. Mark, how you been?
Hey, I'm good, Nate. How about yourself? Glad to be back with you.
Pretty good, you know. I mean, it's kind of wild, like in the sports world. What was it, just a month ago, you got the NFL playoffs, you got the college football playoffs, you got like everything seems to be going at once. College basketball getting into conference play. And then right around the Super Bowl, it sort of takes a significant dip into nothing. I mean, hockey's on a 10-day break for several teams. I mean, it's just sort of, it's weird, the ebb and flow of the momentum of the sports world.
Yeah, it's kind of weird how that goes. The rhythm of it all builds up, and you get the big crescendo, and it's like the fireworks are going off. And then once that show is over, it just goes dark, and there's not much noise. And that, especially right after the Super Bowl ends, there's always that like couple weeks of just kind of depression. Even college basketball is going. I still like college basketball, still watch it. But when football is gone for the year and the Super Bowl is over, and it's just February, there's a little bit of depression that kicks in for a bit. And
we've been treated to some pretty epic NFL playoff games here. If you take out Super Wild Card Weekend, it's been great. But I think, for my money, I actually thought that the college football season this year was as entertaining as any I can recall in recent memory.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. It was great. There were so many teams that were in it until late in the season. There was all the drama with the CFP selection, and then the playoff itself. I'm not a fan of the 14 playoff. I'm extremely happy that it's over, but it's not hard for me to admit that it went out with a bang. It was a great playoff this year and a fun national title game. So they ended the four-team CFP era on a high note, and we got Big Ten Pac-12 game, which was fun, something different. So it was a nice way to send it out.
Were you as shocked as anybody about Nick Saban retiring following their ouster?
No, I wasn't. Huh. There's always the actual kind of shock or being stunned when it happens. But Nick Saban, to me, looked very tired. I knew I'd sent out a tweet earlier in the season, and I looked it up when he retired. It was the game at South Florida. Alabama was on the ropes for most of the game, rainy game. Tide came back and won it. There's video of Saban walking up the tunnel at the end of that game, and my tweet was, I don't think I've ever seen someone look so exhausted in my life. And this is early in the season. He looked exhausted to me. And he looked kind of increasingly tired as it went on, and some other signs he was very lighthearted in a lot of his press conferences and jokey, and he just sort of, to me, looked like a guy who was preparing to move on.
How much do you think the, floodgates of NIL and the transfer portal sort of really weighing on college athletics, conference realignment, all of these things, how much do you think maybe that parlayed into his decision? Like, I used to be able to be in this industry because I like coaching football, and now that is such a minuscule element to building a roster and essentially being a CEO of a corporation that has to somehow keep 20 and 21-year-old kids happy and rich.
It definitely played a role. No question about that. Had he been 15 years younger, I don't think it would have run him out of the sport, though.
Yeah.
I think he's at an age when it's about time to hang it up. It's the amount of time and energy that goes into that job just on a basic level is insane. You add the things you're talking about into it, and he mentioned it a few times. He just said the 16, 17-hour days aren't like what they used to be. They're taking a much bigger toll on me. So, in your 70s going for 17 hours and all the things that they have to do, it certainly played a role, but it was like I said, I don't think it would have been decisive had he been younger.
It's pretty amazing when you look at his now successor in Kalen DeBoer, how fast a guy's career can rise through the ranks. I mean, this guy's was such a successful coach. I mean, at lesser levels of NCAA competition, and then he takes Washington to the championship, and then all of a sudden he is now at the helm of Alabama football. I mean, his resume, just going back 5 years to where it is now, is a vastly different pay scale to begin with. Yeah,
it's the dream career arc for a coach, and that's the one that coaches will keep in mind as they're, laying in bed at night and envisioning their future. That it couldn't have worked out better. The interesting thing about him to me is, and this is the key component. So when coaches are dreaming about this, this is the first thing is winning football games. Kalen DeBoer has won everywhere he's winning, and he hasn't just won. I mean, he's won at a very high level. I remember in 2021 when he was at Fresno State, he took Fresno State into UCLA and upset UCLA in Los Angeles. And 2021 was the year Chip Kelly should have been fired at UCLA, and Kalen DeBoer was right there to be hired. UCLA stayed with Chip, and Kalen, of course, signed with Washington. And then we saw what happened at Washington. But the key with Kalen DeBoer is he's a coach, he's a CEO, he knows how to organize a program, and he wins. So pretty easy decision to make if you're looking at just prospect-wise evaluation. Whether he works out or not is another story. But when you're looking at a prospect, Kalen DeBoer is the proverbial 5-tool, 5-star, however you want to say it.
You do have to wonder, though, like if you look at the exits now from the Washington football department and the amount of transfers they've seen, and then last year that was sort of the same story for a TCU team that had great success, made it to the championship game, and then lost certain guys to the NFL, and then the transfer portal blew up. Like for some of these fans of these schools, like a Washington or a TCU or whoever kind of be the next quote-unquote Cinderella, that's a tough reality. That the moment you have just a sliver of success, it's almost like you get dropped right back down to the bottom of the shelf because you got to rebuild your entire team, including the coach.
Yeah, it's a new world. It's a new world. Now, Washington wouldn't have been in such bad shape if Alabama hadn't come for DeBoer.
Yeah.
A winning culture largely does encourage players to stay because when you win, you play in the big games, you play on the big TV slots, you play in the CFP or the biggest bowl game. So a winning culture helps keep guys around. You need more in this era to do it, especially for the very high-end guys. But if you got a good coach, a good coaching staff, you win games, and the guys feel like they're being developed and improved with an opportunity to play professional ball, you can keep guys around. But it is absolutely true that there's no guarantee that anybody's coming back. You now got to consider keeping guys happy and giving them sometimes extra reasons to stay on your roster as opposed to somebody else's.
We're chatting with Mark Schipper from Fifth Down College Football. You can follow him on Twitter at FifthDownCFB. Mark, Missouri got a huge gift announced yesterday, $62 million donation from an anonymous donor. This is a game-changing money. Now, from a nitpick standpoint, you can look at it. They're going to put $50 million towards stadium upgrades, and then $12 million is going to the Tiger Fund, which is essentially their in-house NIL bank account. You know that all 12 million of that money won't be directed right towards the football team, I wouldn't think. But still, that's a pretty significant gift. And I know that you had retweeted something yesterday that showcases that, typically speaking, like, what did Ohio State spend in money this offseason to build their football team? Do you know that off the top of your head? I thought it was number one in the country.
I don't know it off the top of my head. I don't think all those numbers have been released, but it's clear they went on a big spending spree. I mean, millions of dollars for sure.
But just in general, then, to get $12 million into your Tiger Fund, that is quite the helicopter that just swooped in.
Yeah, it's huge. I'm amazed that person is has an admirable ego or something to do that anonymously. I'd have a billboard out about me giving somebody $62 million. I want them to know it's me. But yeah, that's a huge gift, and the stadium renovations are huge in this age. A lot of schools are doing that to improve the in-stadium experience, to make sure people keep showing up because it's so convenient to watch games elsewhere and oftentimes more comfortable. But yeah, the NIL end of it and the amount of money that's going to give Missouri to build rosters and maintain rosters is it's huge for Missouri, and these should be salad days for Mizzou if they know who they want to recruit. But it's also, to me, an indicator of why this era is not going to last, because calling on your boosters and fans every single season to replenish your NIL coffers and essentially build a payroll for your university, your very wealthy university, to keep players around is not a model that is built to last, in my opinion. So Mizzou should enjoy the hell out of this while they got it, but I think the rest of the sports can be looking to the future in terms of how it works.
Is it? I mean, it's 100% imperative. You have to get these types of donations right now if you're going to compete with the big boys. Even going to a 12-team playoff, let's just at the end of the year look at the payrolls that are associated with the programs that are going to be in the top 4 or top 8 or top 12, and I guarantee you they're all getting donations of this kind. But you're right, I don't think that is sustainable over a long period of time. This is a short-lived sort of boom in college athletics that there's no chance goes on for much longer.
Yeah, I know people will say to me, well, there's always been money involved in college football and college basketball. And that's true. There has been to an extent, but we're talking about the difference between under-the-table money and one-time gifts and small fees for this or that for an athlete, all stuff that has to be handled very carefully, because at that time it was completely illegal. And if you get caught, you're going to do serious damage to your university. So we're talking about that era compared to a wide open boosters donate as much as they want, schools, collectives pay as much as they want. And these payrolls are far higher than they've ever been. And, if the market does its work, it'll just keep climbing higher. And at some point, your fans and boosters are going to say, I don't have another $5 million for you this year, or I got to cut off my $250 a month donation for this year. We got some stuff going on, whatever it might be. It's going to have to creep towards a revenue sharing model. When the sport's making billions of dollars overall, they're going to have to figure out a better way to divvy that up and sign some contracts and get some guys on the roster like that.
We also saw Rick Pitino, basketball coach, come out recently and suggest that he thinks in order to preserve college athletics from completely going through a very difficult spell would be to initiate a salary cap, to which immediately people come out who are against that saying, well, Rick Pitino, would your salary go against that salary cap in general? And, I get where they're coming from, too. Coaches have long taken advantage of a system that, has not been able to pay players, essentially, and the coaches have always been able to go out and fetch contracts larger than what they're currently making. But I just, at some point, you've got to level the playing field, or else this thing is going to completely continue to unravel as the wild, wild west has sort of played out here.
Yeah, it could spin out of control without doubt, and you could see just insane imbalances. Although those would tend to swing and shift back and forth, I would think, across years depending on who's got what. But Pitino's idea it's a good concept. The thing that's going to have to change to make that work is the players are going to have to be made employees of some kind. Either of, I don't think it'll be of universities, because people have pointed out, and they're right, there are a bunch of laws and rules around state university employees and max salaries and benefits, and there's all sorts of details that would not work in a pure athletic context. But I think they'll be made employees of some third-party entity. They'll work it out legally, so they're employees of a conference entity or affiliated with the school kind of entity, something along those lines. We'll know later, but once they do that and they can sign these guys to legally binding contracts, and they have a mechanism to collectively bargain with the players for benefits and shares of revenue, et cetera, then stuff like a salary cap can be talked about. But just capping earnings right now with the players not being employees and with there not being any contracts, they'll get themselves right back in court with antitrust violations. You can't interfere in the marketplace like that. So Pitino's on the right track, but there's got to be some other steps to make that happen.
A few more with Mark Schipper from Fifth Down College Football. And I think to that last answer, we saw something yesterday with the National Labor Relations Board regional director in Boston finding that members of the Dartmouth men's basketball team are employees and granted them the right to unionize. So the NLRB is an independent agency that enforces U.S. labor laws as it relates to collective bargaining. And no one really knows where this type of landmark ruling how it could all play out in terms of it being a domino effect. But this is a pretty significant first shoe to drop in a long-running effort by athletes to be declared employees by the school.
Yeah, it's definitely a landmark on the timeline. Something like it has happened before, though. If you remember back in 2014 through 2016 era, maybe 2015, 2016, Northwestern football players did the same thing. And I believe the NLRB ruled the same way, but it was challenged a short time later and overruled, and there's some more details there. But the significant thing to look at is they're doing that, first of all, at an Ivy League private school. And Dartmouth doesn't give scholarships, so the process is significantly simplified there in terms of the schools not giving the athletes athletic scholarships, so the employer-employee relationship isn't as muddled. And then the NLRB, if I'm not mistaken, does not have authority over public universities. So we got another case going through the courts, and it's at USC. USC, of course, is another private school. Now, USC obviously does give scholarships and major benefits to their athletes through the university. So that if they rule in favor of USC athletes being able to unionize and become employees, now the ball may start rolling downhill, because now you're talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars every year going to athletes at USC, which could then be considered taxable income, which creates issues for the players. There is a whole tangle of issues that will have to be worked through if that happens, but that's the moment we're approaching. So the big brains who understand the law and labor law and all of this need to get working on it, because it's headed that direction. And as we've seen with the NCAA, they are absolute masters at fouling the lines and just creating a massive mess for everyone to deal with.
Well, and doesn't this have the feel that it's just going to be tied up with all sorts of appeals processes, and regardless of how many college athletes decide to join the mess of suing and trying to essentially unionize, it seems like if I were a labor attorney in America, I'd be wanting to jump all over this, because there probably is some money to be made right now.
Yeah, I'm looking at the Lionel Hutz School of Law for everyone who used to watch The Simpsons or still does watch The Simpsons. I need an online legal degree fast, and I got to get myself involved in this process, because the billable hours are going to be a golden age for lawyering in this realm for certain.
Pretty wild. Super Bowl plans for you this Sunday?
Yeah, pretty simple. Sticking around the house. I believe my girlfriend ordered a nice spread of sliders and some other Super Bowl snacks coming from a good spot. So I'm just going to sit around the place and enjoy the game. The Super Bowl is like a national holiday for me, so I just try to soak that whole day in.
I loved what you put out there that Fox Sports dug up of the most players that have ever competed in a Super Bowl by a university, and number one on that list, Michigan. 130 players all time have competed in a Super Bowl. It's fascinating to read.
Yeah, it's an interesting, it's a little bit of an arbitrary list, but the important thing about that list is it means you're getting professional players of a high caliber into your program regularly, so much so that these guys end up in the NFL and one of 32 teams and playing in the biggest football game that this country has. So it's certainly indicative of having high-quality players in your program.
Mark, we'll let you go on that. Anything you'd like to promote before we say goodbye, and feel free to plug anything you've got going on.
Yeah, just Fifth Down, CFB, college football. I'm still working on the book that I'm going to put out. The things have gone so mad in college football. It's kind of, I push the date back so I don't miss all this stuff and make my book obsolete. So just come over to Fifth Down, CFB, Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it, and hang out. I'm usually there, and we get some good stuff going on.
Mark, always great to catch up with you. Enjoy Super Bowl Sunday, and we will do it again soon.
All right, Nate, you do the same. Appreciate you.
Thank you. Mark Schipper from college football, Fifth Down College Football, joining us, talking about a bevy of topics.